Hi, everyone. It's Jess with Jess Smith Coaching, and I'm so excited to chat with you today because I have a special guest on the line with me. I'm so excited to introduce you to Anna Morgan. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Anna is a rescuer of dogs and careers. She was an agency recruiter for over 10 years, helping candidates find gainful employment with great companies across Atlanta and Tampa. She's
Mhm.
been married for 19 years, has 4 rescue dogs, 1 human child, and enjoys coaching lacrosse, as well as being a career volunteer at Roswell United Methodist Church.
Mhm.
And with so many years of recruiting experience, Anna has an absolute wealth of knowledge to share with us today. So I'm super,
Great.
super excited to have her here.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. It's just, having that front row seat to speak with job seekers every day, just kind of sharing some really small tips and tricks that can help job seekers work smarter rather than harder.
Yes, I love it. And so today we are going to loosely focus on the topic of phone interviews.
Mhm.
Super important piece of the interview process, always kind of one of the first steps that everyone has to go through. So I'd love to kick us off with hearing what are the basics that candidates need to be aware of when they're going into a phone interview?
Awesome question. So, first and foremost, like when a job seeker starts, they need to make sure they have a professional voicemail greeting.
Mm.
So, that's the first initial contact that we have when we pick up the phone. When the resume resonates with us and excites us as the potential employer, if we get a crazy message with, music or children speaking or just something that's not professional, the person may hang up the phone and say, thanks, but no thanks. So definitely having that professional greeting, and then always answer the phone, this is Anna, or this is Jess.
Yes.
Because if you just answer the phone like, hello, it can start the tone off a little bit awkward. And if you just keep that, I really feel like everyone should answer their phone like that just to make sure. And with cell phones today, so many people don't pick up their phone. So we're most likely going to get your voicemail, which is why it's important to have a nice greeting set up.
Yeah.
As far as getting ready for a phone interview, I always recommend the standard things of researching the person that you're having the phone interview with on LinkedIn and see if there's anything that you have in common, similar colleges, similar activities, similar interests, because I always believe that there's that connection over qualification that really helps expedite and build that rapport and will make the internal recruiter, potential hiring manager remember that candidate. So research the person that you're speaking with and research the company. Oftentimes, people who are conducting interviews will say to the candidate, what do you know about our company? And if they can't really articulate that, it sends a message that maybe they're not fully engaged and interested in the opportunity. So definitely do your due diligence and have a couple open-ended questions to ask about the company, about the position, and about maybe the culture and the hiring manager or the position. I also recommend that candidates stand up when they begin the phone screen and even do their phone interview in front of a mirror and make sure that they're smiling. This is a wonderful way for them to ground themselves into the conversation, be fully present, and also visually seeing how they're energetically showing up in that phone screen. Um, in my years of experience, I've had people answer the phone who are half asleep. They don't remember what position they applied for. And that lack of being prepared really sends a message that maybe you're not top talent for that particular position.
Yeah,
What
completely.
else am I missing?
Yeah. I mean, you've touched on so many good things. And I love
Yeah.
that you said at the beginning, it's important how you even just answer the phone.
Yeah.
Because it's the very first impression. And
Mhm.
I always, found it to be interesting when I was interviewing candidates because we have this scheduled time, right?
Right.
That I'm calling you, or I think in your case, your candidates end up calling you. But
Right.
I would call candidates, and if it's almost like sometimes they show up in an energy of confusion or kind of where it's like,
Yeah.
hello,
Or they
oh,
forgot.
oh, hi. And yeah, and then I start wondering as the recruiter, like, oh, did they forget that we were going to do an interview today? Like,
Mm,
are they
yeah.
not ready to be on the phone with me? Like, what's happening? So, and then, like you said, it starts that whole vibe of like confusion and like disconnection, honestly, with the
Mm.
recruiter, which is the last thing that you want when you're picking
Yeah.
up the phone.
And it's just important to like show up energetically excited about the position and have the job description up in front of you, so you can tell your story as it relates to that position, because it's all about working smarter rather than harder. You know, most people are not very good interviewers. I mean, just point blank. It is a lot harder than it seems to come up with those questions. And so oftentimes the default will be, well, just tell me about yourself or walk me through your experience. And if you don't know your resume and you can't efficiently walk someone through your career progression in a succinct and concise manner, the flow of the interview kind of gets off kilter. And then the person conducting the phone interview is like trying to pull information out of them. And it really should be a conversation.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's something that, I tell clients that I work with too is like preparation is number one beyond anything. And I think that it's so common knowledge in a way to be like, prepare for tell me about yourself, prepare to walk them through your resume. So people
Mhm.
are like, oh yeah, I know to do that. But if you're not actually practicing it,
Yes.
it doesn't come out in an eloquent way, you know?
Like you think in your head, you're like, oh, I can talk about, I've been a recruiter for 10 plus years. But if I don't actually sit down and practice that, if I were to go and interview, I know that through practicing it, I could nail that so much more smoothly than, well, I started my career here. And it just, practice makes perfect. And just the more you exercise that muscle, the more natural and confident the candidates will be, and they'll show up with more grace and professionalism that really gets the person who's conducting the interview excited to send them on to the hiring manager.
Yeah. And I think when you're prepared, that also eliminates some of the nerves, right? And it
100%.
reduces the possibility for going off on a tangent or speaking for too long, too.
And that's a really common thing that I have recently noticed with candidates is that they get nervous and
Mhm.
they just keep talking and talking and talking and talking, and they're not breathing and they're talking
Yes.
and they're not cognizant of the flow of the conversation. And so then it becomes very one-sided, and we are interpreting this behavior as, okay, this person's kind of like cannibalizing this relationship. What are they going to do in a business setting or in a business meeting? And again, it just goes back to some of the best job seekers are good listeners,
Mhm.
and really being able to answer those behavioral type of questions with the problem, the action, result, and being able to practice those, again, like really knowing your resume and being able to speak concisely through the problems that you solve for the organizations, the how you saved money, how you improved processes, those types of things.
Yeah, that's huge. And so how does a phone interview differ from going to see someone in person, and maybe like the preparation or like things you should think about in those two scenarios?
Well, I think it's just that first impression, right? So again, just showing up professionally, energetically, enthusiastically. Try to build rapport with that first person who is, and every company is a little bit different of how they structure their internal recruiting departments, but it's the first contact, right? And so you're planting that seed, you're nourishing that relationship first, and so that you have to be cognizant of that, because if you don't get past that person, you're not going to get in front of the hiring manager. So preparation for that, again, just as, your normal research, knowing your resume, showing up enthusiastically. And then when you're going in for a face-to-face interview, that's definitely different. You're going to have different people that you're meeting with. There are certain questions that you would want to ask the internal recruiter about said hiring managers so you can prepare for them. Um, Being on time, not too early, not too late. I always recommend having a paper copy of your resume. I did a post on LinkedIn about this, and it it went viral. People are still very passionate about paper resumes. And so just be prepared. A lot of times the hiring managers will have them, but again, it goes back to following directions. And I think this was something that we were going to hit on, that when the interview starts from the initial contact, right? And my process is I'll reach out to a candidate via email and say, hey, I've reviewed your resume. Here's a link to my calendar, and it has instructions on exactly what to do and to call me at the time they schedule. So I can conduct anywhere from 10 to 15 phone screens a day. And there's usually a handful of people that miss that step that says they were supposed to call me,
Yeah.
because I think in the past it's been very normal for the interviewer to call the candidate. But I use this as kind of a little following directions piece, because so many people say they're detail oriented, and that really triggers, my evaluation of the candidate. Can they get through these simple steps? And I'm not a big fan of like assessments and stuff like that in the corporate world, but something as simple like this, of reading all the way through an email, says something about a candidate. So
Yeah.
and the same with coming on site for an interview. I've had candidates show up an hour early, and it throws the cadence of the process off. It creates a traffic jam in the lobby. The receptionist feels like they have to entertain the candidates. If you get to the site early, stay in your car and then go in 10 to 15 minutes ahead of your scheduled time.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, just like following those directions, right?
Yes.
Because the
Yeah.
interview is starting before it's even started, in a way,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is huge. And so many people, yeah, like you said, it's easy to miss those steps. And so it's really a great way to stand out as a candidate too, as someone who actually follows through on every single piece of the process that
Right.
you're outlining
Yeah.
for them.
And I think another thing we were going to touch on is follow up, right?
Mhm.
So as you're building the relationship with the internal recruiter or even the agency recruiter, you know, I think candidates are singular focused, right? They're focused on that one position or that one company, and they may not be cognizant of the number or volume of positions recruiters are working. So follow up is critical. And a couple tricks that I recommend for candidates is definitely be active on LinkedIn. So if you build a target list and you're following those companies and you're engaging with those companies, you want to be commenting on your ideal hiring manager and that recruiter's content on LinkedIn. Because psychologically, the way the mind works, like we buy and hire people that we feel like we can trust and we have rapport with, and they've established credibility and they've showed up as an authority and a leader and they're adding value. So engage in content. Also follow up. I did another post on this about phone interviews. I did 14 phone interviews one day and I received 3 thank you notes.
Mm.
So it's really important to follow up and say, thank you for the time. I enjoyed speaking about the particular position. Highlight anything that might have been personal in the conversation. If you talked about traveling, if you talked about sports, if you talked about family life, like whatever it may be, because again, how my mind works and how a lot of recruiters' minds work is that there's something unique about that candidate that makes them memorable. So don't be afraid to highlight that in the follow-up conversation. Always reattach the resume just to be safe, because with so many messages coming in, it's always helpful to have that. And then I always recommend candidates have their name, their phone number, and their email in their signature, because the nature of how quickly we move, it's so helpful just to see the phone number right there. If the hiring manager said yes, then I can call right away, pick up the phone, and get them scheduled. So it's all about that ease of use.
Mm-hmm.
And remembering, reframing basically the summary of what you talked about, the position you talked about, and giving all that information right there just to make it super easy for the recruiter.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you're saying about making it personal. I think
Mm-hmm.
that people have it so ingrained that we have to be professional, 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 which means not connecting on a human level sometimes. I think that
Yes.
that's we've
And I
come to
really
make that
feel like
appropriate.
we're moving away from that with like
Yeah.
social media, and everyone is, we are our brand, right? That's who you are. What you put out in social media is becoming like your portfolio. I mean, I'm interested to see what resumes are going to look like in 20 years. I mean, is it going to be all of our social platforms combined? So don't be afraid. Like when I coach people on their LinkedIn profile, I'm like, use your about section to tell a story about who you are as a human being. That goes back to that connection over qualifications. What piques interest in people. And of course, you're going to come across very formal, rigid, traditional, like, oh, you can't, be personal. There are going to be those people, but I do think the trend is moving more towards soft skills and those connections. So don't be afraid to highlight those in your conversations and in your profile. And someone asked me the other day, should they put their interest on their resume? And it got me thinking. I say yes. If you've been in the workforce for more than 10 years, it's debatable. I'd be interested to see what you think, but it's always a nice talking point. I love to know if people went to Africa and helped build orphanages, or were an Eagle Scout or something like that.
Completely. Yeah, like you said, it makes the candidate stand out as a human, right? Like this is who they are as a human. And I remember when I was doing sourcing, so basically like headhunting, my role was to
Mhm.
find people on LinkedIn that would be a good
Right,
fit for my open positions and to, recruit them into coming to my company that I was at.
right.
I remember if I found people exactly like you said in their about section, if they had something fun and personal in there,
Mhm.
like I remember there was a guy, and it's funny, like I don't remember his name, but I remember how I felt when I found his profile, right?
Yes.
Because he had something about his work, and then the second half of his about me section was about how he loves like taking his kids to swimming lessons and they go to the park every weekend.
Mhm.
Just like really fun stuff that I was like, wow, he seems like a really genuine, like nice human that I would want to know. And I was
Exactly.
so much more intrigued to talk to him, excited to talk to him. Like
Yeah.
he was more top of my list, right? Because I enjoyed, and then I got him on the phone and he was a lovely person, right? He was amazing. And so I had that personal connection with him
Yeah.
and I kind of became his advocate, right?
Yes. Yes. That's
Like
what
I
I'm
wanted
talking
him to get
about.
a job.
Yeah. Yeah, because you make that connection, and maybe their headline is not perfect, and maybe they've had a couple too many jobs, or but having that connection and seeing that person as a human being that does things outside of this little box, right? That we have this job description
Yeah.
for, makes all the difference. And again, companies are leaning more towards developing talent and soft skills and character. And so don't be afraid to highlight those things. And this comes up in my volunteering, especially with like baby boomers and traditionalists. When I share this, they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, tell us about you. And Gen Z millennials and younger, or Gen Xers, the lost generation, we're open to anything. But more of that older generation was like, no, I was taught that, buttoned up, super professional. I have the keyword searches and that's all I need to share. And I can't put my phone number there. And I'm like, we want to get a hold of you. Don't be afraid to put your phone number. You cannot answer the phone.
Yes, so true. So true.
So,
And then I think it goes, the other way too is like the people that you are going to be speaking with as a candidate, you should be looking at their profiles. And you kind of mentioned this and seeing what interesting things that they have on there that you can make a connection point with. And I would love if you shared, you had told me you love when people comment on your rescue dogs
yeah.
or like things that people see on your profile.
Yeah, I mean, I went to a LinkedIn Live event earlier this year, and so many people spoke to me about coaching women's lacrosse. And, it was
Yeah.
like at the very bottom of my profile, and I was like, wow, people really pay attention to this stuff. And it's a conversation starter outside of being like, what do you do? It's like, oh, you're Anna Morgan, you coach fifth grade lacrosse. And then the conversation just flows from there. And dog lovers, cat lovers, animal lovers. I mean, we can talk for hours about that. And then it's also like attracting your vibe, right? Like the energy you put out there, and that if you show up in that authenticity and who you are, you're going to attract like-minded people that align with what you're looking for in a company, aligning with their mission, their vision, their values. So that's why engaging on LinkedIn and following people and companies and hiring managers that interest you makes so much sense. So going back to the follow-up, so you follow up via email, you've been engaging on LinkedIn, then people will send me a direct message and say, hey, Anna, I just wanted to introduce myself to you. I've applied for this position. I love your content. I am very interested in this particular position. May I have some of your time? And that shows that they've done their research, they're showing up, they're engaging, they've done they're interested in the company. And that's when I give them my calendar and say, okay, like I will talk to you, where I may not have gotten to their resume in the applicant tracking solution.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to target hiring managers and recruiters from different angles.
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
such good advice. Such good advice. Because like you said, recruiters are dealing with so much volume that you have to stand out like in any way that you can so that you don't.
Yeah. And again, and be more specific is always more profitable. I get a lot of messages that say, here's my resume. Please keep me in mind for positions at your company. And so I end up referring them back to the careers page and say, please, identify a top position that you feel you're qualified for and circle back with me. But that is just lazy job seeking, in my opinion, because they're expecting the recruiter to do the work for them. And so again, going back to being professional, being prepared, and being detailed, it's doing that due diligence ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. Completely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. So last question for you, Anna. I'm wondering if you have any like fun or unique stories of candidates who really did something to like stand out to you.
So in my most recent position as a talent acquisition recruiting for a corporate company, I had a candidate who was really great on the phone. And he wasn't like a home run for the particular position, but we had such a unique conversation. And again, I can't remember exactly what it was about his background, but it was, again, like you said, how he made me feel. And so he stayed top of mind, and I basically like floated his resume by like 2 other departments, and one of them bit, right? And so they didn't even have a position open, but they brought him in and interviewed him and ended up creating a position based on his skill set. He was very technical, fairly new in his career, but really good Excel and SQL experience, and just hit the nail on the head. And I showed up to work the day he started, and he had a thank you card and like a $5 gift card for Starbucks. And it was just amazing, and I love getting handwritten thank you notes too. Oftentimes, I get handwritten cards from people that come in and work with us. People pop by my cube all the time just to check in and thank me for helping them get their foot in the door. There was a recent grad who, she was literally applying for like every position, and I just kept seeing her name and seeing her name and seeing her name. And I was like, I don't have a position available for her. And then one of my finance managers called and said, I need a temp. And so I called this young woman and I said, listen, I know you are hustling, you're applying for these jobs, you're following up with me, you're messaging me on LinkedIn. Here's your chance, right? So she came in as a temp, proved herself in finance, and then ended up getting hired in our construction team. So it
Wow,
was a win-win for everybody. Yeah.
that's amazing.
So it's just about working collaboratively, like with your recruiter. Like, we want to fill our seats and we want to help you get a job. But if you do these little tips with following up, showing up energetically, engaging in social platforms, keep your social media clean because we look at all that stuff. And show up enthusiastic and do the research, you're increasing your chances of moving through the process by being prepared and just putting your best foot forward.
Completely. Wow, that's such great advice. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Anna, for being with us today.
Absolutely. It was so fun. So hopefully this will be helpful for your audience and so appreciate the time. This was super fun. It's
Of course.
so powerful when women collaborate and share experience, strength, and hope with the job seekers out there.
Yes, completely agree. Where can people find you online? Where is it best for them to find your?
So LinkedIn is probably the best place. It's just Anna Morgan on LinkedIn. And then I'm active on Instagram, the number one Anna underscore Morgan. And that is my tagline on Instagram. And we'll see you out there.
Perfect. Thank you again, Anna. We'll see you guys
Thank
later.
you. All right.
Bye.